Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Laurent. I'm the head of customer success at AssessmentQ, and I'm your host for today's Spotlight Chat. This is the fourth and final session in our series around security and digital exams. Over the past weeks, this series has taken us on a journey through real challenges of exam security. Each of those conversations landed on the same truth: monitoring, enforcement, and technology matter, but they're not the whole story. That brings us to today's topic: what happens before the exam even starts? Because some of the most powerful integrity decisions aren't made in the exam room, they're made on the drawing board. Today, we're exploring how exam design itself can prevent fraud before it happens, how deliberate choices about how exams are built and delivered contribute to security, both remotely and on-site. I'm joined today by Tom Huiskamp, Business Unit Manager for QA Professional Certification, an organization that develops and delivers exams across multiple sectors and knows firsthand how these design choices shape integrity. I'll let him introduce himself properly in a moment. But before we dive in, a quick note on the format. This is just a conversation, not a presentation. I'm here to guide, but the spotlight is on Tom, obviously, on his real-world experience, on his decisions in this aspect. So, Tom, let's get into it. If you would please present yourself.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation, first of all. My name is Tom Huiskamp. I'm unit manager at Kiwa, where I oversee the teams responsible for exams and personal certification. And my work centers on ensuring that professionals can demonstrate their competence in a very reliable and secure way. In other words, I'll help make sure that exams actually measure what they should measure, while keeping the system trustworthy for candidates, employers, and overall society.
Okay. So IBEX develops and delivers across many sectors, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So how does that integrity, what does it mean to you in practice? Why is it so critical? Because you've mentioned it, you need to make sure that these exams are reliable. I think that's one part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, it's important that you get the knowledge from the people that is needed for the job that they do. So the exams that we take are mostly technical exams for people that they need their certificate for their job, and the construction of exams. With the construction of exams, you need to get the information out of people that they need to do their job good.
So it's maybe to frame it another way, what's at stake if the results would be compromised, if there would be fraudulent attempts, for example?
Well, you get people at the job sites that don't have the knowledge that they need to have. So it can, for an unsafe situation, it can be creating an unsafe situation for themselves, but also for their environment. So it's in different sectors. So if you look at a building site, if people didn't do the exam correctly, so they don't have enough knowledge, there can be fatalities on the job site. So that's why it's important to prevent fraud in exams. Yeah.
So there's really lives at stake. So I think that's really high stakes.
In worst case, it's lives at stakes, but also in other exams or other jobs. If you have you don't have the knowledge to do the exam, but you will do the job later on. How good are you gonna do your job? So it's on different levels. In fatality is the worst, of course.
And maybe just for the viewers, in what kind of sectors are you active, just to get a better image of that, where to see where these risks lie, really?
It's a very broad spectrum of sectors, but if you look at the sectors we are the biggest in, it's really the technical jobs. So the certification on building sites, but also when you work with asbestos or when you work with high voltage electro or gas. So it's very niche market, but very important to have a good exam and ultimately a certificate. But we also do exams for companies that find it important to measure their employees on a standard. So they will decide where an employee needs to have, and we'll build an exam around it. So it's very a broad spectrum, but the biggest exams, the most people we examinate, it's in the technical sector.
Okay. And maybe to dive more into the topic of today, I think when people talk about the exam security, I think the obvious things that come to mind are monitoring, surveillance, etc. But there's also what happens before the exam even starts, the design of the exam or other choices that you can make. What's one exam design choice that has contributed to your ID as much to integrity as just proctoring or supervision, for example?
Yeah, it's most important. My experience is that you have a lot of candidates in one room or via proctoring, but then they all get a different exam. So you have the same knowledge, but everybody gets a different question or a different answer or different exam. And I think that's one of the most underrated fraud prevention that we see.
So you bring, let's say, 20 candidates in a room, and everyone gets a different exam, different questions, different order.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, correct. Yes.
Okay. How do you manage that?
Yeah, you have to have a lot of questions. So part of you have to have a lot of questions. You also can get the same question but different answers. So in different
orders.
Different orders, right? Yeah. So you have to, if you cheat, if you look next to your neighbor and he types in answer A, it's not the same answer as that an answer A as that you have. So that's important in that kind of case.
Do you also think about question formats, for instance?
Yeah. The most if you look back at 10 years ago, we only got multiple choice questions, so only one answer is right, A, B, C, D. But now you see multiple answers that are correct. You see assessments, question based on a story, or so you have multiple possibilities to answer ask the questions, and with a picture, with a little sound, or with a drawing, and that you have to hotspot questions. So you can the range of sort of questions, it's way bigger as that it used to be.
Okay, that's quite interesting. Do you guys also work with, or do you consider the skills necessary to answer a question? For instance, is it mostly one skill per question, or is this also used as a way to make it more difficult to have fraud during an exam, to combine skills so that they really need to demonstrate that knowledge?
Yeah, that's most important. You want to get all the parts of the knowledge. You want to have that in the exam, but the start is based on what does the exam take place. So if you have an education and we develop an exam based on that education, you want to make as broad as possible. So you need to have different kind of questions that require different kind of knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you have concrete examples of cases where your exam choices really prevented fraud, where a candidate really got
Yeah,
bumped into that?
Fraud isn't it doesn't always come up that somebody commits fraud. Certainly not in the live sessions that you have 20 candidates in the room, because there's always somebody looking if somebody cheats. But in the development part, it's starting already, because there is the first prevention starts before the exams exist. So a secure exam begins long before the candidate sits in a room, and it starts with clear competence definitions. When learning outcomes are vague, it becomes easy to guess what will be tested, or to game the system. So it's important you have diverse types of items, a mix of practical assessments, case-based questions, performance tasks, and knowledge items that makes it almost impossible to fraud-proof your way through. It's also the role-based responsibilities. So a good design includes checks and balance. So you have item writers, people that make the question, but you also have reviewers, people that check if the question is right, if it's correct. Exam security officers, facilitators. So each plays a part reducing those vulnerabilities.
I think that's
yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great insight, that you don't always need to add more surveillance, right? So smarter design absolutely also reduces the risk while preserving trust, while having less friction with your candidates. Exactly.
Absolutely. Exactly. The structure of question can dramatically reduce cheating opportunities. So, so we talked about the randomizing, random order of items and answer options ensure no two candidates have the same experience. But also adaptive testing. So when the exam adapts to the candidate's level, leaking single questions or even a set provides little value.
Do you use adaptive testing a lot? Is that something that is key in your organization, or is it for very specific cases?
Yeah, it's for specific cases, because normally the end of the product, so the certificate, asks for one a kind of knowledge, so not adaptive kind of knowledge. So it's not the most used form of examination for us.
Okay. Of course, we also have the aspect of the exam environment, right? So you have remote exams, you have on-site exams. I'm not sure if you actually focus on both equally as much, but during that design phase, do you design differently for a remote exam, for instance?
Well, for lockdown browsers to identity verification, delivery system close many attack vectors. So and proctoring strategy is not just monitoring, but choose between digital or not hybrid proctoring based on risk. What you see is that well, it depends on the company or the overall certificate, what the quality of the exam has to have. So proctoring is relatively new. So yeah, it's not always it's a different type of question, but you see that in classroom exams. That the exams that we take there are going a lot longer than a proctor exam, because it's a little bit more sensitive to get the question via proctoring exam than that it can be in a classroom full of students.
You mean that the questions get exposed more easily through a exam? Okay, so the design is pretty much the same of the exam, but you do need more questions because they get exposed quite more easy. Yeah, that makes sense.
Sometimes you see in some exams that only take place once a year, that there always be other exams the year after. So they're not using new cases, they're not using old cases or old questions.
Okay. Well, that's quite smart, of course. Okay. I think the difficulty is always in security. There's always a trade-off between having impact on your candidates somehow in one way or the other, and then still the security that's at stake. Except for randomizing questions, do you feel like there's other design factors where you really need to balance on that line?
Between
having some friction with your candidates and security during that design phase?
You need to. The exam is to test knowledge, not to test if somebody is reading good or prevents it from cheating. So it's always a balance between those two. So you have to make good questions. You have to get the answers right. The answers that are not good are also need to be good faulty answers. So. It's always a balance between those. So sometimes it's difficult to get good questions that don't get in the way of getting the knowledge up. So it's sometimes makes it very difficult. Yes, that's true.
And are there any other measures that you choose not to apply because you feel like they are too invasive for a candidate, for example?
It depends on the restriction of the exams, but sometimes it's needed by a proctor exam, via proctor exam, that you need to scan a whole room, that you have to scan up and down under the desk. That's very invasive in their environment. So sometimes you don't choose for that, but when you look at question forms, sometimes it's needed that they have a sort of documentation next to the exam. So it's very hard to monitorize that. So we have to ensure that there's no extra information in those documents, so we have to deliver those documents rather often. So there is sometimes the choice to choose between a sort of question. If you have the open question, so people get on a question and they need to type in their answer themselves. It's a good form of question. Only somebody has to check the answer. So you will always have one or two people that have to check them. What also drives the price up because two people have to check it. But you also two different people are checking it. So and there are also two different people's opinion. So and it's not often with a single question and a single answer, but it's very often with an assessment where they have to put multiple words in, multiple text, and then the interpretation of the reviewer sometimes is difficult. So it's not always the most efficient way of questioning.
Yeah, exactly. So it's using those open questions to get them a question that tests on multiple facets of their knowledge or skill. But then, of course, you have to weigh it against the efforts of having graders that grade the questions, having some complexity on to make sure that you have an objective grading, double grading, as you mentioned as well. So that definitely is a trade-off to make. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then maybe another totally different aspect of exam design or organization front is maybe rules, standards. So think legislation as well. Do you feel like your choices are steered by those things as well? Are there things, for example, that you would like to do, but they are not compliant with certain client requirements or not with certain standards that you need to test? Or
it's mostly regulations. What keeps you restricted to a certain amount of questions, of amount of questions, or the way you ask the exams questions. And it's always also a money time thing. So multiple choice questions are easy to produce, but also easily to review or check. So it's often the choice that they choose for multiple choice or closed question in those situations.
So it's more economics than pure legislation, for instance. It's more economic choices that prevents your customers to go really all in on that design.
Precisely. Yeah, and exam integrity is not about catching cheaters. It's about designing systems that make cheating irrelevant.
Exactly.
So that's the core point there.
Yeah, I think that's a key insight as well. I think because there will always be fraud. I mean, you can
absolutely.
take all the measures in the world. There will always be someone creative enough. It's a bit of a cat and mouse game, really.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And then maybe another aspect, because especially when you think of proctoring, I think, as in Europe especially, we are often also checking this against GDPR, for instance. Do you feel like that has an impact on your work as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's most importantly is the check if somebody is that they say they is. So you have to show your passport or ID card or driving license. That's all information that and you have to show the room that you get in a private environment of people. So in what you see in the Netherlands is that is proctoring is not that popular because of GDPR regulation. So it sometimes restricts us to do the proctor exams. Yeah, absolutely.
And then later on in the process, I think you're probably as well also often confronted with appeals. And I think an appeal is a candidate not fully trusting the process. That's where your trust is tested. How do you handle these complaints or disputes in a way that you can still say it was fair what we did, it was defensible that we did?
Yeah, the start is of course a good design of the exam. So where's the exam based on? How did the process look? Did we follow the right steps? We is there an exam legislation of I don't know precisely how we call it, but and everybody can appeal an exam if they don't succeed the exam. And we also always trust the process. If we and sometimes it is right. If there are that many people that are looking at an exam, but still there are questions or answers that don't compete with don't. Doesn't it's for multiple interpretation possible. So and then we have exam committee that look at the appeal, and then we decide if the appeal is okay or if it isn't. And then sometimes we adjust the score or adjust the question, or it's different per situation.
Okay, because that was actually going to be my next question. How does that process look like? Who makes those calls? But maybe one thing that still remains unanswered, what evidence matters to you during these decisions? Are there things that you say, okay, we definitely need to take this into account, or we cannot take that into account, for instance?
Yeah, everybody can appeal their exam. Well, if when they don't pass the exam, if they pass, they never do an appeal. But when they don't pass, they can do an appeal. It's a bit different per exam, but sometimes you can come to a location and get insight in the exam that you made, and you check the answers and the questions, and sometimes people say, well, I disagree with that answer or that question, and they have to write down or note why they disagree, but also with you need to tell if you need to prove why you don't agree with the question, and then somebody who also have doesn't is don't is the exam process, he doesn't take place in the exam process, that somebody will look at the appeal, and well, then it's decided in the exam committee, and they do the final advice, and then and yeah, that leads to a decision.
Okay, so the exam committee gets the complaints, looks at all the evidence available, comes to a decision, which is an objective decision to make it fair and defensible.
But most of the time it's not a complaint, but it's an appeal. So a complaint can be the coffee was too hot, or my seat wasn't good. So that's in the process. But when it's in over the exam, then we can have the exam committee.
Okay, what was the funniest complaint you've ever gotten, just as a sidestep?
Well, yeah, we have complaints about questions. No, not complaints, but appeals about questions. But it was a different exam the person took. So he did an exam, and afterwards he wasn't he didn't pass. Of course, I can say, and he did the wrong exam. So that was the complaint or / appeal about. So yeah, it's I can do nothing about it.
Yeah, I can understand the candidate in this case, though.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you, Tom. So maybe just to close the session, if another exam body asked you for your Integrity by Design playbook, which or what 4 to 5 like guiding principles would you share to protect the integrity and trust of your candidates? What are for you the main lessons on this topic?
Yeah. Well, my top 5 of principles to ensure exam integrity are starting with security by design. So integrity starts long before the candidates enter the exam room. A good design makes fraud difficult, and genuine competence to the easiest path. Examples include varied items type, randomized questions, scenario-based tasks, clear, stable, competence framework. The core idea there is make cheating harder than mastering the material. So that's important to know. So what is it worth for a person to cheat on an exam? A second one is segregation of duties. It's not a single person should control the entire exam process. Splitting responsibilities reduce risk and increase accountability. That's also what I talked about the exam committee. There are all different people in that committee that take different positions and have different responsibilities. Transparency and fairness. So secure exams are trusted exams, and candidate must understand the rules, the expectations, and the assessment criteria. I think data monitoring and continuous improvement. So fraud detection doesn't stop after delivery. Using analytics and exam forensics techniques help and identify unusual response patterns, abnormal score profiles. That's that sort of thing. Last but not least is culture of integrity. So technology designs only go so far. Integrity ultimately depends on people. This includes trained examiners, clear reporting procedures, ethical awareness, and leadership that prioritize fairness and safety. So integrity is not a mindset; it's a policy.
Yeah, and maybe also a culture within your organization as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think I really loved make cheating harder than mastering the material. I think that is I think that is the essence of it, really. That is nice. Okay, well, thank you very much, Tom.
Yes.
Stepping back, this was the final session in our spotlight chats around security and digital exams. I just want to take a short moment to look at the full arc of what we've explored together. So we started by mapping the landscape. Fraud is evolving. Security can no longer be siloed. So then we went deep on lockdown decisions, when they help, when they don't, and the trade-offs involved there. Then we looked at how creative frauds really is a definitely in remote settings, and what is at play over there. And then what a solid detection and response flow looks like. And today we've closed it by going upstream and looking at the design decisions that can prevent fraud before it has a chance to happen. So thank you, Tom, for that. So these 4 sessions, 4 different angles, 4 real client or partner stories. But one consistent thread: exam security is a joint responsibility of everyone involved. It lives across people, process, and technology. So that's exactly what Tom mentioned at the end. It works when every stakeholder, from the person writing the questions to the candidates sitting the exam to the platform running it, plays a part. So that is the Secure at Heart philosophy. So thank you to all the guests, thank you to all the hosts, all the viewers who made this series what it was. If any of today's themes resonated, we'd love to continue the conversation. So reach out to our customer success team, share your experiences, and stay connected as we keep building on this together. Until next time, take care and keep designing for trust. Thank you.